There's a question that keeps seekers awake at night, a question whispered in hospital rooms, in refugee camps, in the quiet darkness after loss. A question that echoes through every tradition, every philosophy, every heart that has known true pain. Why? Why would a soul, eternal, divine, free, choose to be born into suffering? Imagine a child entering this world with a body that will never fully work, a consciousness descending into a war-torn land where safety is memory, not reality, a spirit selecting a family that will wound rather than nurture, that will teach cruelty before it teaches love. If we are truly divine beings, if we truly have choice before incarnation, if the universe is truly benevolent, why would we choose this? Every spiritual teaching speaks of love, of a compassionate cosmos, of souls as sparks of the infinite divine. Yet when you look at this world, truly look, you see anguish everywhere, children who go hungry, bodies that betray their inhabitants, hearts shattered by abandonment, lives cut short by violence or illness or simple, crushing despair. How do we reconcile these truths? Is suffering random? Is it punishment? Is the universe indifferent or worse, cruel? Or is there something deeper happening, something the mind cannot grasp but the soul remembers? I want you to know something before we go further. If you've ever felt that your suffering was meaningless, if you've ever believed you were dealt a cruel hand for no reason, if you've ever looked at your life and wondered why you, of all people, had to endure what you've endured, this message is for you. Because by the end of this journey, you'll understand suffering not as punishment, not as randomness, but as sacred curriculum. You'll see your own pain, past and present, through new eyes. And you'll recognize why your soul may have chosen the exact circumstances you were born into. Your pain has purpose, your struggles are not accidents, and your soul is far wiser than you know. But to understand why the soul chooses suffering, we must first understand who and what the soul truly is. Let's begin. Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, who am I? Not your name, not your job or your relationships or the story you've been telling yourself. Deeper than that, who are you beneath the skin, beneath the thoughts, beneath the accumulated years of joy and heartbreak? Edgar Cayce's readings, given over the course of 43 years to thousands of seekers, revealed a truth so fundamental that every religion touches it, every mystic knows it, every soul remembers it in moments of clarity. You are not a body that has a soul, you are a soul that has a body. Let that settle. Feel the shift that happens when you reverse the equation. You are not this temporary flesh learning to be spiritual. You are an eternal consciousness learning to be human. Before you ever took your first breath in this life, you existed. Before any planet formed, before any dimension crystallized into being, your soul was, created by the divine, made in the image of the Creator, not in physical form, but in essence, creative, loving, free, eternal. Think of the sun. The sun doesn't try to shine, shining is its nature. In the same way, your soul doesn't try to be divine. Divinity is what you are. And in that primordial state, before incarnation, before time as we know it, you were perfect, complete, lacking nothing. So why leave? Why would a perfect soul descend into an imperfect world? This is where Cayce's readings become luminous with meaning. The soul, he explained, desired experience, not because it was incomplete, but because it wanted to know itself not just as concept, but through action. Imagine knowing every theory about swimming but never entering water. You could describe the mechanics, understand the physics, even teach others. But you would never know the sensation, the weight and weightlessness, the surrender and the strength, the way water holds you as you move through it. The soul chose incarnation to swim, to test itself, to grow, to become through doing. Cayce described it this way: the soul sought to be a companion with the Creator, not just a reflection. And companionship requires individuation, requires choice, requires experience that is uniquely yours. But here's the profound paradox at the heart of incarnation. In choosing experience, the soul also chose forgetting. You had to forget your divinity to truly test your ability to remember it. You had to forget you were eternal to discover what it means to be mortal. You had to forget you were loved beyond measure to learn what it means to seek love, to lose love, to become love. This forgetting is not cruelty, it's necessity. A student taking a test must not have the answers written in front of them, or the test teaches nothing. In the same way, your soul enters each life without memory of its divine origin, without knowledge of past lives, without certainty of what comes next. The veil descends and the journey begins. If you've ever felt homesick for a place you can't name, if you've sensed you're more than this body and these circumstances, if you've experienced moments where the physical world seems thin, translucent, like a dream you're about to wake from, you're right. You're remembering. You're touching the eternal truth of what you are. But this raises another question, doesn't it? If the soul is eternal, if it's divine, if it chose to be here, how does it decide where and when and how to be born? What I'm about to share with you may challenge everything you've been taught about birth, about destiny, about why your life looks the way it does. Edgar Cayce's life readings, individualized spiritual biographies given to thousands of people, revealed something extraordinary. Before each incarnation, before the soul descends into flesh, there is a planning session, not metaphorical, actual. Imagine this with me. You exist in the realm of spirit, no body yet, no limitation of time or space. You are pure consciousness, surrounded by light that isn't light as we know it, light that is alive, aware, loving. And you are not alone. Around you are beings of profound wisdom. Some call them guides, others call them angels or master teachers or the council of elders. Cayce simply called them companions, souls who have walked the earth many times and now serve those still in the cycle of incarnation. Together you review, past lives unfold like tapestries. Not every life, there may be hundreds, even thousands, but the most recent ones. The patterns emerge clearly. What lessons were learned, what gifts were developed, what wounds remain unhealed. More importantly, what karma, what cause and effect, needs balancing. Because nothing is random, nothing is wasted. Every action you've ever taken, in this life or any other, has created ripples. Those ripples eventually return to their source. And now, preparing for a new life, you and your guides examine those returning waves. Where have you been cruel? You'll need to experience being on the receiving end of cruelty, not as punishment, but to understand, to develop the empathy you lacked. Where have you been selfish? You'll need to experience lack or service to others to balance the scales. Where have you abandoned others? You may choose a life where you're abandoned so you truly know what you caused. But karma is only part of the planning. There are also aspirations, qualities you want to develop, gifts you want to master, service you want to offer. Maybe you want to cultivate patience. You'll choose a life that tests you with delays, with obstacles, with situations that require you to wait and trust. Maybe you want to master unconditional love. You'll choose relationships that challenge every condition you've ever placed on love, relationships with people who are difficult, who test you, who demand you love them without expecting anything in return. Maybe you want to become a healer. You'll choose a life where you experience illness or trauma or loss because you cannot heal what you haven't understood from the inside. And so the blueprint begins to form, not every detail. The soul doesn't micromanage. Free will remains sacred, but the major potentials are set. The family you'll be born into, the geographical location, the body you'll inhabit, its strengths, its vulnerabilities, the key relationships you'll encounter, the challenges that will shape you, the opportunities for growth. Here's what most people find hardest to accept. The soul chooses with full knowledge of what's coming. Before you were born, you knew you would face the challenges you're facing now. You knew your father would be absent or abusive or alcoholic. You knew your body would struggle with illness or disability. You knew you'd experience poverty or war or loss that would break you open. You knew, and you chose it anyway. Not because you're being punished, not because the universe is cruel, but because you're courageous. Only the bravest souls take on the hardest lessons. Cayce's readings are filled with examples. A woman born blind didn't arrive that way by accident or divine punishment. Her soul chose blindness to develop inner sight, clairvoyance, spiritual perception, the ability to see what sighted people miss. A man born into crushing poverty didn't suffer bad luck. His soul selected that challenge to master non-attachment, to learn resourcefulness, to discover that wealth isn't found in bank accounts, but in the richness of spirit. A child born into an abusive family didn't draw the short straw. That soul chose those parents, that pain, to learn boundaries, to claim self-worth, and eventually, if the lesson is completed, to master forgiveness. Your life is not happening to you. It's happening for you, through you, as you. But what specific lessons require such difficult entry points? Why would a soul agree to suffer when it could choose ease? Let's explore the first rear. Azanu. There's a truth that doctors know, therapists know, anyone who's ever truly helped another person through suffering knows. You cannot understand pain you haven't felt. You can sympathize, you can imagine, you can study and memorize and develop theories, but you cannot know, not in the marrow of your bones, not in the depth of your soul, what someone is experiencing unless you've walked a similar path. This is why the soul sometimes chooses suffering, to learn compassion, not the shallow kind, not pity or sympathy that keeps a safe distance, but compassion, the kind that comes from the Latin com, with, and pati, to suffer with, to know suffering so intimately that when you encounter it in another, you recognize it like your own reflection. Edgar Cayce called this the healer's initiation. Many souls who incarnate to become doctors, nurses, therapists, counselors, or spiritual guides choose to be born into illness, trauma, or hardship, specifically so they can know the suffering they will later alleviate in others. Picture a soul preparing for incarnation. This soul has a deep calling to help people heal from trauma, to sit with them in their darkest moments and be a steady presence, a light in their darkness. But this soul, in its previous lives, has never experienced that kind of trauma itself. It's been sheltered, protected, comfortable. How can it serve trauma survivors without understanding trauma? It can't, not fully, not in the way that actually helps. So the soul makes a choice. It selects a family where violence is present, where safety is conditional, where love comes with conditions and punishments. The childhood that follows is harrowing. The child, the incarnated soul, suffers deeply. There are nights of fear, days of confusion, years of wondering why. But decades later, that same soul sits across from a client who's describing their own abusive childhood. And something happens that wouldn't be possible without the soul's early suffering. Recognition, not just intellectual understanding, not clinical knowledge from a textbook, soul-level recognition. I know this territory, I've walked this path, and I survived, which means you can too. The wounded healer doesn't just treat symptoms. The wounded healer knows the wound from the inside, knows how it whispers lies in the darkness, knows what it takes, what courage, what small daily choices, what grace to heal it. And that knowing creates trust, safety, permission for the other person to be fully seen in their pain. This is why your suffering wasn't wasted. If you've endured trauma and felt called to help others through similar pain, this is why. Your wounds weren't random. They were preparation. Your mess is becoming your message. But compassion isn't only for professional healers. Sometimes the soul chooses suffering to become an advocate. Think of the great voices for justice throughout history. The civil rights leaders, the human rights activists, the people who dedicate their lives to fighting oppression, to speaking for the voiceless, to changing systems that crush human dignity. Many of them, perhaps most of them, experience the injustice they fight against, born into discrimination, born into systems designed to keep them powerless, born into circumstances that teach them from the earliest age that the world doesn't value their humanity. Why would a soul choose this? Because personal experience creates unstoppable conviction. You can be argued out of theory. You can be persuaded to abandon abstract principles, but you cannot be argued out of what you've lived. When you've felt the weight of oppression on your own shoulders, when you've seen the faces of those you love distorted by hatred they didn't earn, when you've lived the daily indignity of being treated as less than human, you don't fight for justice because it's a good idea. You fight because you cannot not fight, because you know, and knowing demands action. This is the fire that changes the world. This is the passion that doesn't burn out or compromise or grow comfortable. And your soul knew that, which is why it chose the initiation of injustice, not to be broken by it, but to be forged by it into an instrument of change. There's one more kind of compassion curriculum I need to share with you. The teacher's journey, those who will eventually guide others towards spiritual awakening, whether formally as teachers or simply as people whose lives become testimonies to transformation, often choose profound suffering. Addiction, loss, betrayal, dark nights of the soul so complete that nothing remains but the question, who am I when everything I thought I was is gone? Because here's what Cayce understood and what every authentic spiritual teacher knows. You cannot guide someone out of darkness you haven't navigated yourself. You cannot teach surrender if you've never had to surrender everything. You cannot speak credibly about finding meaning in suffering if your own life has been comfortable. The soul that will become a teacher of awakening often chooses a life that will break it open. shatter every illusion, strip away every false identity. The addiction that brings the soul to its knees teaches humility, teaches the necessity of grace, teaches that the ego cannot save itself. The loss that empties everything teaches what remains when all is lost, teaches that the soul is indestructible even when the heart is in pieces. The illness that forces surrender teaches that control is an illusion, teaches trust, teaches presence. And when the soul emerges from those crucibles, when it's been dismantled and rebuilt around truth instead of illusion, it carries a light that others recognize, not the light of someone who read about transformation, the light of someone who lived it. If you've suffered deeply and found yourself called to share what you've learned, called to sit with others in their pain, called to be a presence of hope for people walking paths you've walked, your soul is smiling. You've turned your greatest wound into your greatest gift. That's not tragedy, that's mastery. But compassion is only one reason the soul chooses suffering. There's something deeper, something older, the accounting of lifetimes. We need to talk about karma, not the popular version, not what goes around comes around as cosmic revenge, not a punitive universe keeping score to punish you. Karma, as Edgar Cayce taught it, is simply cause and effect across lifetimes. Every action creates ripples. Those ripples move out into the universe, touching other souls, shaping circumstances, creating conditions. And eventually, maybe not in this life, but eventually, those ripples return to their source, not as punishment, as education. Cayce put it this way: the soul must meet itself. What you inflict upon others, you will experience. What you withhold from others, you will lack. What you give freely, you will receive in abundance. This is how the soul learns wholeness. Imagine a soul in a previous life, let's say 15th century Europe, who owned slaves, who treated human beings as property, who inflicted suffering without conscience because the culture said it was acceptable. That soul dies, returns to spirit, reviews the life with its guides, and in that review something becomes unbearably clear: the suffering caused, the humanity denied, the ripple effects of cruelty that extended through generations. The soul sees for the first time what it did, not through the detached lens of justification or cultural norms, through the lens of the souls who suffered, and the soul makes a choice. In the next life, or several lives later, it chooses to be born into the position of the oppressed, to be enslaved, to be property, to know in every cell what it once inflicted. This isn't punishment from an angry God. This is the soul's own curriculum. The soul is seeking understanding, seeking balance, seeking to feel what it once caused others to feel so that it can develop the empathy it lacked. This is karmic reversal. And Cayce's readings are filled with examples. A soul who abandoned children in a past life chooses to be abandoned in this one, so it knows the weight of that wound and never inflicts it again. A soul who hoarded wealth while others starved chooses poverty, to understand what it means to have nothing, to rely on the kindness of others, to recognize that human worth isn't measured in possessions. A soul who wielded power cruelly chooses powerlessness, to learn humility, to develop compassion for the vulnerable, to understand that true strength is gentle. None of this is random, none of this is unfair. It's the soul's way of becoming whole. But karma isn't only about reversals. Sometimes it's about relationships. Cayce's readings revealed that we incarnate in soul groups, clusters of souls who agree to help each other learn and grow lifetime after lifetime. And sometimes those relationships are complicated. A parent who was cold and neglectful in this life. In a reading, Cayce might reveal that in a previous life, the roles were reversed. The child was the abuser. The parent was the victim. Now they're giving each other the opportunity to heal. The neglectful parent is experiencing what they once inflicted. The child is learning boundaries, self-worth, and the power to break cycles. Siblings in constant conflict. Cayce often found past life betrayals, business partners who destroyed each other, lovers who wounded each other, and now they're back, working through the karma, trying this time to choose differently. A spouse who leaves unexpectedly. Sometimes Cayce would trace it back to a life where the person now abandoned did the abandoning. The soul is learning what it once caused. The purpose isn't revenge, it's reconciliation. It's the opportunity to meet the same situation, the same dynamic, and make a different choice. To offer forgiveness where you once demanded revenge. To stay when you once left, to love where you once hated. This is how karma is transmuted. This is how souls graduate from patterns that have repeated for millennia. But I need you to hear this carefully. Cayce also taught that karma can be transformed through grace. If you awaken in this lifetime, if you genuinely change your consciousness, if you serve others, if you pray and meditate and align yourself with divine will, the harsh lessons can be learned through gentler means. You don't have to experience every consequence if you've already learned the lesson. Prayer softens karma, meditation transmutes karma, service redirects karma. The universe isn't rigid, it's responsive. If you're facing difficult karma right now, if you're in circumstances that feel unbearable and you sense they're connected to choices made long ago, listen to this. Your soul believes you're ready to clear it. This lifetime, you can break cycles that have repeated across centuries. You can meet the lesson, learn it, transcend it, and never have to repeat it again. But there's a third reason the soul chooses suffering, one that might surprise you. It has to do with contrast. Here's a question that has puzzled philosophers and mystics for thousands of years. If the soul exists in a realm of pure spirit before incarnation, a realm of perfect love, perfect peace, perfect bliss, why isn't that enough? Why leave paradise? And Cayce's answer is both simple and profound, because in a realm where everything is light, you cannot perceive light. You only know warmth because you've felt cold. You only appreciate health because you've known illness. You only recognize love because you've encountered its absence. Without contrast, there's no perception, no awareness, no experience of the very qualities that make existence meaningful. Some souls choose suffering not to balance karma or build compassion, but simply to experience the full spectrum of existence, to know the edges, to feel the extremes, to understand what it means to be alive in a dimension where opposites exist. Think of it this way. Imagine you've lived many peaceful lives, comfortable lives, lives where basic needs were met, where love was abundant, where challenges were minor and manageable. Beautiful lives, nothing wrong with them. But after many such incarnations, the soul might want something different, not punishment, not karma, adventure, intensity. The soul might choose a turbulent life, not because it's being forced to, but because it wants to feel what that's like, to experience the full range of human emotion, to know what it means to struggle, to suffer, to survive against odds, and then, in a future life, to experience abundance with a depth of gratitude that wouldn't be possible without having known scarcity. Cayce described this in readings where he'd tell someone, "You've chosen this limitation to sharpen other gifts." A soul choosing blindness to develop inner sight. A soul choosing poverty to cultivate non-attachment and resourcefulness. A soul choosing a short, difficult life to experience in 30 years what might be diffused across 100 years of comfort. It's not about suffering being good. It's about suffering being textured, dimensional, real in a way that ease sometimes isn't. Think of a painting. If you use only one color, only light, only brightness, the painting is flat, lifeless. There's no depth, no shadow, no sense of three dimensions, but add darkness, add contrast, add shadow and light together, and suddenly the painting comes alive. The bright places become radiant because they're surrounded by darkness. The shadows create mystery, depth, gravity. Your life is that painting. Your suffering isn't a mistake in the composition. It's the depth, the dimension, the contrast that makes the bright moments luminous. If you've endured darkness and now find that simple joys move you to tears, a sunset, a kind word, a moment of unexpected peace, you understand this. Your capacity for gratitude was forged in hardship. You notice beauty that others miss because you've known its absence. You cherish love because you've felt unloved. You recognize grace because you've survived gracelessness. This is the gift of contrast. And here's what Cayce taught about the soul's ultimate return. After lifetimes of incarnation, often hundreds of lives, the soul eventually returns to full unity with the divine. But it doesn't return as the same soul that left. It returns enriched, deepened, fuller. It brings back the experiences, the growth, the hard-won wisdom earned through countless incarnations. The soul that returns knows light more completely because it navigated darkness, knows love more fully because it experienced lovelessness, knows divinity with greater depth because it temporarily forgot it. And that enrichment, that growth, serves not just the individual soul, but all of consciousness. When you evolve, when you grow, when you transmute suffering into wisdom, you elevate the entire universe. Every tear you've shed, every struggle you've endured, every moment of choosing love when hate would have been easier, all of it adds to who you're becoming. All of it matters. But this raises a critical question. How does the soul know which lessons to choose? How does it calibrate the difficulty? Does the soul ever choose too much? If you're listening to this and part of you is thinking, "But I can't handle what I'm going through. This is too much. My soul made a mistake choosing this," I understand. The human part of you, the part that feels pain, that gets exhausted, that sometimes just wants the suffering to stop, that part is real and valid. But let me share what Cayce taught about how souls plan their incarnations. The soul, working with its guides, carefully calibrates the difficulty of each life. You are never given more than you can handle spiritually, not emotionally, not physically. Those levels might be overwhelmed, but spiritually, at the level of your eternal soul, you have the capacity for this journey, or you wouldn't have chosen it. Think of it like weight training. A beginner doesn't walk into a gym and attempt to lift 300 pounds. They start lighter. They build strength gradually. And over time, muscles that once struggled with 20 pounds can handle much more. Souls work the same way. Young souls, those early in the reincarnation cycle, typically choose simpler lives, fewer variables, smaller challenges. lives that allow them to learn basic lessons about being human, about relationships, about cause and effect. Intermediate souls choose moderate challenges. They've built some strength through previous incarnations and are ready for more complex situations, more nuanced lessons. Advanced souls, those who have lived hundreds of lives and are approaching the completion of their earthly schooling, often choose the hardest lives, the most difficult circumstances, the most intense challenges, the most painful initiations, not because they're being punished, because they can handle them, and because these lives offer the most rapid growth. One lifetime of consciously navigated intense suffering can propel the soul forward by the equivalent of 10 lifetimes of moderate challenges. If you're facing extreme difficulty right now, consider this possibility: your soul might be advanced, not broken, not cursed, not being punished, advanced, ready for the graduate level curriculum. But the soul doesn't send you in unprepared. Cayce taught that the soul builds in safety mechanisms, guides and angels assigned to you for this lifetime, offering spiritual support even when you can't perceive them. Soulmate connections, people you're destined to meet who will help you, teach you, love you through the hardest parts. Intuition, the soul's whisper guiding you through decisions, warning you of danger, encouraging you toward growth. Synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that remind you you're on track, that you're not alone, that something larger is at work. You are never truly alone, even in your darkest moments. The soul planned for help, for support, for grace woven through the difficulty. But I need to be honest with you about something painful. Sometimes the soul underestimates the challenge. Sometimes circumstances in a life become harder than planned, often because of others' free will creating unexpected complications. And sometimes the soul chooses to exit early, through illness, through accident, through other means. Cayce acknowledged this. He didn't call it failure, he called it recalibration. The soul returns to spirit, reviews what happened, and plans differently for the next attempt. There's no punishment for this, no cosmic shame, just love, just understanding, just the opportunity to try again when ready. If you're struggling right now with thoughts of ending your life, please hear this. Ending the physical body doesn't end the lesson. The soul carries the unresolved pain into the next life. The wound doesn't close just because you leave this incarnation. Better, so much better, to seek help in this life, to reach out, to find support, to let others walk beside you through this. You don't have to face this alone, and the growth you achieve by staying, by finding your way through, by surviving this crucible, that growth stays with you forever. That becomes wisdom, becomes strength, becomes light you'll carry into every future lifetime. So if your soul chose this challenge, what are you meant to do with it? How do you navigate suffering in a way that honors the lesson without being destroyed by it? Suffering alone teaches nothing. Let me say that again. Suffering by itself is not transformative. Pain is just pain. Hardship is just hardship. Trauma is just trauma. What makes suffering meaningful is what you do with it, how you meet it, how you move through it, how you allow it to reshape you. Cayce taught that suffering leads to one of two outcomes: bitterness or breakthrough. Bitterness happens when suffering is met with victimhood. Why me? This is unfair. I don't deserve this. With resentment, blaming others, blaming God, blaming the universe for your circumstances. With stagnation, refusing to grow, clinging to the pain as identity. building a life around being the person this happened to. When suffering creates bitterness, the lesson isn't learned. The soul carries the wound forward, unhealed, and often the same lesson appears again in the next life, offering another opportunity to transcend it. But breakthrough happens when suffering is met with curiosity. What is this teaching me? What pattern am I being asked to recognize? What strength is being forged? With acceptance, not resignation, not giving up, but acknowledging this is my reality right now. I can't change what happened, but I can choose how I respond with service. How can I use this experience to help others? What gift can emerge from this wound? When suffering creates breakthrough, it transmutes into wisdom, into strength, into compassion that changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. Let me walk you through the alchemical process, the steps that turn pain into purpose. First, acknowledgement. Don't spiritually bypass. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt. Don't rush to everything happens for a reason before you've actually felt the weight of what happened. Feel the pain, cry, rage if you need to, grieve, honor the human experience of suffering. Your soul incarnated to be human, which means feeling everything, joy and pain, love and loss, hope and heartbreak. You don't transcend pain by denying it. You transcend it by moving through it. Second, inquiry. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, ask the questions that open the door to meaning. What is my soul trying to learn here? What pattern am I being asked to break? What strength is this building in me? Who will I be able to help because of this? Don't force answers. Let them emerge. Sometimes it takes months or years before the meaning becomes clear, but the questions themselves shift something. They transform you from victim to student. From someone suffering randomly to someone on a sacred journey. Third, meaning making. Find your story, not the story others tell about you, not the victim narrative, not the tragedy narrative, the hero's journey narrative. Reframe your experience through the lens of initiation rather than destruction. Instead of "I'm a broken person who was abused," try "I'm a warrior soul who chose a difficult initiation to develop unshakable self-worth and the ability to help other survivors." Instead of "I'm sick and my body is failing me," try "I'm learning surrender, trust, and how to find peace beyond physical circumstances." Instead of "I lost everything and my life is over," try "I'm being emptied so I can be filled with something real." I'm discovering who I am when all the external markers are stripped away. Your story shapes your reality. Choose wisely. Fourth, integration. Live differently because of what you've learned. Make different choices. Break generational patterns. Refuse to pass the pain forward. If you were neglected, become someone who notices others. If you were betrayed, become trustworthy. If you were judged, become accepting. Let the suffering change you, not by hardening you, but by opening you. Fifth, service. Share your story when appropriate. Help someone walking a similar path, not to fix them, not to impose your interpretation on their experience, but to offer presence, to witness, to say, "I've been there and I survived, and you will too." Let your wound become your gift. This is alchemy. This is how suffering becomes sacred. If you've already begun this process, if you're seeking meaning in your pain rather than drowning in it, you're succeeding. You're doing the soul's work. But what about those who are still in the fire, still in active suffering, unable to see beyond it? What can be offered to them? I need to speak directly to those of you who aren't in the reflection phase yet. Those who are actively suffering right now, in an abusive situation, in chronic pain, in grief so fresh it's disorienting, in financial ruin, in mental anguish that makes each day feel impossible. For you, hearing your soul chose this might feel like salt in the wound, like I'm asking you to be grateful for your suffering, to bypass your pain with spiritual platitudes. I'm not, please hear me. You don't have to see the purpose right now. You don't have to force gratitude for what's destroying you. You don't have to pretend it's okay when it's not okay. It's enough, more than enough, to simply survive this moment. The meaning will come later, when you're ready, when you're safe, when you have the capacity to look back and reflect. Right now, your only job is to breathe, to get through today, to hold on. Let me offer you some practical support, not philosophical, not abstract, concrete. When pain is overwhelming, return to breath. 4 counts in through your nose, hold for 4 counts. 4 counts out through your mouth, hold for 4 counts. Repeat, this moment only. You don't have to handle tomorrow, just this breath. Seek help, therapy, crisis lines, trusted friends, medical care. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your soul didn't choose this journey so you could suffer alone. It chose people who would help you, guides in human form. Let them. Micro actions. You can't fix everything today. Maybe you can't fix anything today, but can you do one small thing? Drink water. Step outside for 60 seconds. Send one text to someone who loves you. Small actions create momentum, and momentum creates hope. Remember impermanence. This feeling, this situation will not last forever. Cayce taught, this too shall pass. Everything in the physical realm is temporary. The pain you're in right now, as real and overwhelming as it is, will shift. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but it will shift. Let me offer you some spiritual tools for the suffering. Prayer, not for rescue necessarily, but for strength. Help me endure. Help me find meaning when I'm ready. Help me not be destroyed by this. You don't have to believe in a specific God. Just speak to whatever you sense is larger than you. The universe listens. Meditation. Even 5 minutes of silence can create space between you and the pain. You don't have to empty your mind. Just sit, breathe, notice. Let the thoughts come and go like clouds. Nature, if possible, if you can, touch earth, touch water, touch trees. They carry ancient, stabilizing energy. They've endured storms and seasons and cycles of death and rebirth. They remember what your soul knows, but your mind has forgotten. You are stronger than you think. And let me teach you something Cayce emphasized. The witness self. There's a part of you, your soul, your eternal self, that is watching this suffering but is not consumed by it. Even in your worst moments, there's an awareness that observes the pain but is not identical to it. Practice this in moments of overwhelm. Mentally step back, not to dissociate, not to escape, but to create just enough distance to breathe. Say to yourself, I am aware of this pain. I am not only this pain, I am also the awareness witnessing it. This creates space, just enough space to remember you are more than what's happening to you. If all you can do today is survive, that's enough. Your soul isn't disappointed in you. It's holding you, surrounding you with love you might not be able to feel right now, but that is there nonetheless. And when you're ready, not today, maybe not this year, but someday, you'll look back and understand why this was necessary. And for those who have emerged from their fire, there's another calling. For those of you who have survived suffering and found some stability, some meaning, some peace, what now? What do you do with the scars? What do you do with the hard-won wisdom? Cayce's teaching is clear. Your suffering wasn't just for you, it was for everyone you'll touch because of it. You've walked through darkness. Now you carry a light for others navigating similar paths. This doesn't mean you must become a professional therapist or spiritual teacher, though you might. It means you live as proof that suffering can be survived, integrated, transformed. The healer emerges not through perfection, but through survival. How does the wounded healer serve? Through presence, simply being someone who survived what another is enduring offers hope. You don't have to fix them, you can't fix them. Their journey is their own, but you can witness them. You can sit beside them in the darkness and say, without words, I know this place. You're not alone here. Through story, sharing your experience when appropriate, not forcing it, not making it about you, but offering it as a light in someone else's darkness. You're not alone, I've been there, and I'm here now. 3 sentences that can save a life. Through boundary modeling, you've learned, often through painful trial and error, how to set boundaries, how to honor yourself, how to say no, how to recognize when helping becomes enabling. Teaching this, through action more than lecture, helps others claim their own worth. Through compassionate truth-telling, you can speak hard truths with love because you know how brutal false comfort can be. You know that sometimes the most loving thing you can offer someone is honesty wrapped in kindness. But I need to warn you about something, the dark side of helping. Don't let wounded healer become a new identity trap. You are not obligated to help everyone who asks. Your healing comes first. Service comes second. It's okay to rest. It's okay to say no. It's okay to protect your energy. And please, please don't use helping others as a way to avoid your own continued healing. That's just another form of escape. Cayce taught a beautiful balance: be of service and honor your needs. They are not mutually exclusive. You can help others and take care of yourself. In fact, you must do both. Let me ask you a reflection question. What specific suffering did you endure? That's your specialty. That's your unique gift to the world. Survived addiction, you're uniquely positioned to help other addicts in a way therapists who have never struggled with addiction cannot. You speak the language, you know the lies the addiction tells, you know what it takes to get free, healed from abuse. You speak a language survivors understand. You can look someone in the eye and say, I believe you, I know what happened to you was real, and it wasn't your fault. And they'll believe you because they can see you've walked this path. Navigated chronic illness, you can guide others through that terrain. You know the isolation, the loss of identity, the daily negotiation with a body that doesn't work the way it used to. You can offer hope without false promises. Lost a child, your grief makes you a tender companion for other grieving parents. You won't say the wrong things because you know firsthand how those wrong things cut. Your pain has made you an expert in something the world desperately needs. This isn't tragedy. This is alchemy. If you're already doing this work, showing up for others because of what you've endured, your soul is smiling. You've turned your greatest wound into your greatest gift. That's mastery. But there's one more layer, the most profound reason of all, the deepest answer to why the soul chooses suffering. Here's what I need you to understand. 2 truths can coexist. They're not in competition, they're not contradictory, they're 2 perspectives on the same reality. Human truth: suffering hurts. It's often unjust. It can feel unbearable. You have every right to grieve, to rage, to seek relief, to want it to stop. Your pain is real. Your struggle is valid. You are not weak for finding it difficult. You are human. Soul truth, suffering is chosen, purposeful, transformative. It serves your evolution. Your soul knew what it was agreeing to. The pain has meaning. The struggle has direction. You are stronger than you know. You are eternal. Both are true, always. You can honor your human pain without denying your soul's wisdom. You can cry about the cancer and trust there's a reason you're facing it. You can grieve the lost relationship and recognize what it taught you. You can rage about the injustice and know your soul is using it for growth. You don't have to choose between being human and being spiritual. You're both, always. The path forward isn't to transcend your humanity. It's to be fully human and fully spiritual simultaneously. To feel everything and trust everything. To suffer consciously. To grieve with awareness. To be broken open while remembering you're indestructible. But I need to warn you about two dangers. Two ways this teaching can be misused. The first danger, spiritual bypassing. Don't use "my soul chose this" as a way to avoid feeling pain. If you're saying, "I shouldn't be sad because this is my lesson," you're bypassing. If you're forcing gratitude before you've allowed grief, you're bypassing. If you're using spiritual concepts to suppress human emotion, you're not transcending, you're repressing. Feel everything. Honor every emotion. Cry when you need to cry. Rage when you need to rage. Let yourself be fully human in your suffering. Then, when you're ready, when you've honored the pain, when you've moved through it rather than around it, seek the meaning, but never skip the feeling. The opposite danger, materialistic nihilism. Don't use "this is just random suffering" as an excuse to stay bitter, to refuse growth, to close your heart. If you're saying, "life is meaningless and nothing matters, and we're all just meat machines suffering randomly until we die," you're giving up on the soul's journey. Seek meaning, find purpose. Look for the patterns and the lessons and the growth opportunities even in the darkest experiences. Trust that your life has direction even when you can't see where it's going. But never use spiritual seeking to invalidate the very real, very human pain. The middle way, Cayce's way, is this: be fully human. Feel everything, seek help when you need it, honor your limits, acknowledge the difficulty, and be fully spiritual. Trust the process, seek meaning when you're ready, serve others when you can, remember your eternal nature. This is the path of the embodied soul, awake in both realms simultaneously, crying and trusting, suffering and growing, human and divine, not one or the other. Both, always both. Which brings us to the question, what do you do now? How do you actually live with this knowledge? How do you live differently knowing your soul chose your suffering? How does this understanding change your daily experience? It starts with shifts, internal reframings that gradually rewire how you meet difficulty. Shift from victim to student, the old paradigm, why I? Is this happening to me? The new paradigm, what is this teaching for me? Not to invalidate pain, not to excuse injustice, but to empower yourself through it, to recognize that even in circumstances you didn't choose, you can choose your response. You can choose to learn. You can choose to grow. Shift from bitterness to curiosity. When difficulty arises, and it will again and again because you're human, pause, breathe, ask, what pattern might I be breaking here? What strength is being forged? Who will I be able to help because I'm going through this? Curiosity creates space. Space for meaning to emerge. Space for grace to enter. Space between stimulus and response where freedom lives. Shift from isolation to connection. Your suffering connects you to every other soul who's suffered. You're part of the human family now in a deeper way, not separate, not uniquely cursed, not alone in your pain, part of the great web of beings learning to love through limitation. Reach out, share your story when it's appropriate, listen to others' stories, recognize the shared journey. This is how we heal collectively. Shift from powerlessness to co-creation. Yes, your soul chose the potential for this suffering. Yes, certain circumstances were set before you were born, but you still have free will in how you respond. You can't always control what happens to you. You always control who you become through it. This is your creative power. This is your divine inheritance. Now let me offer you some daily practices. Small, concrete ways to integrate this wisdom into your lived experience. Morning meditation. Before the day begins, before you check your phone or read the news or step into the demands of the world, sit for 5 minutes. 10 if you can. Connect with your soul. Ask, what do I need to remember today? How can I honor both my humanity and my divinity? What lesson am I working with right now? Listen for the answers. They might come as words, as images, as feelings, as sudden knowing. Trust what emerges. Evening reflection. Before sleep, review your day, not with judgment, with curiosity. Where did you resist your lessons today? Where did you embrace them? Where did you choose love instead of fear? Where did you choose growth instead of comfort? No judgment, just awareness. This practice builds consciousness, and consciousness is what transforms suffering into wisdom. Gratitude for the hard things. This is advanced work, don't force it. But when you're ready, try this. I'm grateful for this loss because it taught me what truly matters. I'm grateful for this illness because it slowed me down enough to listen to my soul. I'm grateful for this betrayal because it showed me who I can truly trust. This isn't about pretending the pain wasn't real. It's about acknowledging what you gained through it. Service once a week, or more if you can, do something for someone else. Small things count, big things count. Let your pain fuel your compassion. Let your experience guide you to those who need what you've learned. This is how wounds become gifts. This is how suffering becomes sacred. Creative expression. Write, paint, sing, dance, garden, cook, create something. Let the suffering move through you and become art, beauty, offering. Pain that stays inside becomes poison. Pain that moves through you and transforms into creation becomes medicine. For you and for everyone who encounters what you've made. If you're already doing even one of these practices, you're honoring your soul's choice. You're not just enduring suffering, you're transforming it. And that makes you an alchemist. But what about when you're not the one suffering? What about when someone you love is in pain and you feel helpless to ease it? This might be the hardest teaching of all, the one that tests us most deeply. You cannot, and should not try to, remove someone else's soul lesson. When you love someone, every instinct screams to save them from suffering. If you could take their pain, you would. If you could solve their problems, you would. If you could rescue them from the very experiences their soul chose for their growth, you would do it in a heartbeat. But Cayce taught, if suffering is their soul's choice, if it's the curriculum they're here to learn, then saving them might actually interfere with their growth. Your rescue might rob them of the very breakthrough they're approaching. This doesn't mean abandoning them. It doesn't mean standing by coldly while they suffer. It means accompanying them without taking over, supporting them without removing the lesson. How do you do this? Through presence, be with them, don't try to fix them, don't preach at them. Don't minimize their pain with spiritual platitudes. Just be there. Sit beside them in the darkness. Hold space. Your presence, your willingness to witness their pain without needing to change it, is itself healing. Through listening, let them tell their story, express their pain, work through their confusion. Your job isn't to solve, your job is to witness, to hold up a mirror that says, your pain is real, you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're human, and you're going through something difficult, and I see you. Through practical help, bring food, help with childcare, run errands, offer financial support if you can, ease their burden without removing their lesson. There's a difference between helping someone carry their weight and trying to take the weight away entirely. Learn that difference. Through honoring their timing, they'll find meaning when they're ready. Don't force spiritual teachings on someone in acute pain. Don't say your soul chose this to someone actively bleeding. Hold the space. Trust their soul. Trust that when they're ready, the insights will come. Your job is to be there when they arrive, not to drag them there prematurely. Through boundaries, and this is crucial, you can love someone and protect your own energy. You can care deeply and still say no. You can want to help and recognize when helping becomes drowning. Don't sacrifice yourself trying to save someone who's learning to swim. Their soul's journey is not your responsibility. Your own soul's journey is. If they ask for perspective, if and only if they ask, you can gently share, I don't know why this is happening, but I believe your soul is stronger than you know. And I believe there's meaning here, even if we can't see it yet. And I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Never say, your soul chose this, so stop complaining. Never minimize. Never spiritually bypass their pain with teachings they're not ready to receive. Always say, I see your pain, I'm here, and I believe you'll find your way through. For those of you who are parents watching your children suffer, I know this is excruciating. Your every instinct screams to intervene, to fix, to prevent. But Cayce offered this comfort. Even your child's soul chose their path. They chose their challenges, their lessons, their growth opportunities. And you were chosen to be their parent because you're capable of loving them through it. Your job isn't to prevent their pain. It's to model resilience, compassion, and trust in the divine order. It's to be the safe harbor they return to when the storm is raging. It's to love them unconditionally while they navigate what they came here to navigate. This is perhaps the hardest form of love, the love that holds space without controlling, that supports without rescuing, that trusts the soul's wisdom even when the human heart is breaking. So where does all of this leave us? You've journeyed through a difficult teaching. You've looked at suffering not as punishment, not as randomness, but as choice, as sacred curriculum, as the soul's path to wholeness. If part of you still struggles with this, if part of you wants to reject the idea that you chose your pain, that's okay. Honor that resistance. You don't have to believe everything I've shared. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Your journey is your own. But I want to leave you with this. Your suffering has meaning. Your pain has purpose. Your struggles are not evidence of a cruel universe. They're evidence of a courageous soul. You chose to be here now in this body, in these circumstances, not randomly, not as punishment, but because you wanted to learn something vital, because you wanted to balance something unresolved from past lives, because you wanted to develop compassion through direct experience so you could help others through similar pain, because you wanted to experience contrast so you could know light more deeply. because you wanted to remember your divinity through the shattering of illusion. Every time you choose love in the face of pain, you elevate not just yourself, but all consciousness. Every time you find meaning in suffering instead of drowning in bitterness, you prove that the soul is stronger than circumstances. Every time you serve others from your wounds, every time you let your mess become your message, you justify the entire incarnation cycle itself. Tonight, before you sleep, try this. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. That rhythm is ancient. It's been beating through countless lifetimes, carrying your eternal soul through experience after experience. Speak to your soul, out loud or silently. Say, I'm listening. Help me understand. Help me trust. Help me transform this pain into wisdom. This week, write a letter to your soul. Ask why you chose this life, why these circumstances, why this particular curriculum. Then listen. The answer might not come immediately. It might come in dreams, in synchronicities, in sudden knowing that arises while you're washing dishes or driving or walking. But it will come. Your soul wants to communicate with you. It's been waiting for you to ask. This lifetime, live as if your suffering matters, because it does. Live as if you're here on purpose for a purpose, because you are. Live as if your pain can become whist. Your wounds can become gifts. Your darkness can become the very light others need to find their way home, because they can. If this message resonated with you, share it. Not to convince anyone, not to force these teachings on people who aren't ready, but to offer comfort to another soul questioning their pain, to be the presence you needed when you were in your darkest moment, to extend your hand to someone still in the fire and say, I've been there, and I survived, and you will too. Let me leave you with an image, a soul before birth, surrounded by guides looking down at earth, seeing the life ahead, the pain, the challenges, the heartbreak, seeing all of it with perfect clarity, knowing exactly how hard it will be, and choosing it anyway. Not because the soul is foolish, not because it doesn't understand, but because the soul is wise, because it knows the only way out is through, the only way to wholeness is through fragmentation, the only way to remember divinity is through temporary forgetting. And on the other side of this journey, after the suffering has been met and moved through and transformed, you'll be whole in a way you could never have been without it. Edgar Cayce, that remarkable seer who spent his life helping others understand their soul's journey, offered this in one of his readings. The Lord has not willed that any soul should perish, but has given to each the opportunity to know themselves and their relationship to the creative forces. That's what suffering is, an opportunity, not a punishment, not randomness, an opportunity to know yourself, to know your strength, to know your divinity, to remember what you are beneath the circumstances, beneath the pain, beneath the temporary human experience. Your suffering is not your destruction. It is your initiation, and you are emerging from it right now, even if you can't feel it yet, more radiant than you entered. You chose this, and dear soul, weary traveler, wounded warrior, you chose well. Breathe, you are eternal, you are divine, you are exactly where you need to be. And your soul's journey has only just begun.